Funding for the Maddy Report is made possible by grants from BNSF Railway, Community Health System, Fresno State Associated Students, Inc., Harris Ranch Resort, Producers Dairy, the Spencer Family, and The Wonderful Company. Additional support provided by the Maddy Institute, the Public Policy Institute for the Valley's 4 public universities. This is the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Blake Zanti.
Welcome to the Maddy Report. Today, we're highlighting a historic milestone for higher education and public policy in California's Central Valley. UC Merced, the youngest campus in the University of California system, has achieved R1 status, placing it among the most elite research universities in the nation while being located right here in our backyard. Joining us to discuss this remarkable achievement is UC Merced Chancellor, Dr. Juan Sánchez Muñoz. Chancellor, welcome to the Maddy Report. Appreciate
Thanks for having me, Blake. Delighted to be here with you, with all of you.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation today. Let's kind of jump in. Folks who may not be in academia or may not be familiar with the term R1, could you just talk about, what is R1 status and what does this classification signify both for UC Merced and our region?
Sure, great. Thanks, Blake. Thank you again for the question and having us here to be able to talk about our campus, which we're very proud of. We're very proud of being in the Valley. The Carnegie Foundation created just over 5 decades ago, 50 years-ish, a sort of hierarchy of institutions predicated on what they do relative to research, their research enterprise. When it was first designed, it was the idea of identifying those campuses that were doing particularly assertive work in areas, research areas, very much related and associated with the national interest in science and technology, discovery, medicine, et cetera, et cetera. And so over the years, more and more institutions have been added to the R1 being the highest classification of research enterprise. It means you're among the top research universities in the country by volume in terms of science, publications, discovery, and research funded by different agencies, both philanthropic, private foundations, as well as the federal government.
How does this designation also enhance the value of a degree at UC Merced, both for current and future students?
Well, there's no doubt that it does. When you're in the company of the Harvard, Princeton, Yale's, Berkeley's, Michigan's, UCLA's, et cetera, there's just a different recognition of the caliber of education you received at that institution. We're really in the company of the most distinguished colleges and universities in America, period. The world continues to look at the United States as the gold platinum standard for higher education, of which now UC is a part of. So really it will continue to provide value for our graduates, both past and future, in a way that is even different than what it was just a few years ago. All of this, of course, is because of the caliber of the faculty, the research, our facilities. We have new buildings going up right now. Many in the Valley don't realize that only recently was there a $1.2 billion investment at UC Merced. We added about 13 buildings, over 1 million square feet of classrooms, labs, food facilities, etc. We are cutting edge, leading edge. Most of our facilities are LEED or Platinum LEED certified, highest in terms of sustainability. We've got young people from all over the state coming to our campuses, graduating and going on to extraordinary careers in really the most important industries, including in data science, data analytics, chemistry, physics, etc. All of this happens because of the culture that's created in an R1 environment.
Talk about, also the profound impact on faculty members as well. What does this designation mean for them? And you've touched on this a little bit, but more specifically, aside from students who are benefiting from this, how are faculty and how is their research going to be elevated with this designation?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, I don't know. I don't know too many faculty that aren't aware of this designation on our campus. But more importantly, faculty are hearing from their counterparts and colleagues across the United States with congratulatory notes. And what it does is it brings UC Merced to the attention of those that are preparing grants and research proposals. Remember, sometimes you're the PI. I write the grant and I'm the principal investigator, and then I get my friend Blake to be part of this grant. But also, I can be at the University of Michigan, I can be at University of Texas, I can be at Florida State, and I think, who's doing research in precision ag with new innovations in mechatronics that are ag-related? UC Merced, okay? And now we're part of a large NSF engine grant, not for 2 or 5 million, but for 25 million. That's the kind of thing that happens in an R1 environment where you're partnering with other R1 institutions that understand you have the culture, you have the facilities, the labs, and you have the faculty to support their very large transformative sort of proposal, and of course the science that it generates. And so these are the things that will happen.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more on how UC Merced's R1 status is shaping not just academic outcomes, but also the economic development and future trajectory of the Central Valley. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Maddy Report. I'm here with UC Merced Chancellor Juan Sánchez Muñoz. Chancellor, thanks again for joining us on the Maddy Report today. We've been talking about UC Merced and some of the exciting updates regarding the R1 designation. But this isn't just about academia, and you mentioned this right before we went to a break. It's also about being an economic driver in the region. You were talking about students who now have opportunities all throughout the valley, from Fowler, Dinuba, Bakersfield, right, who now benefit from this designation. But just in general, how is UC Merced, not only with this designation, but just in general, attracting those investment opportunities to the valley that ultimately do benefit these rural communities that you serve?
Yeah, sure. Wonderful question. Something I think we have to continue to talk about and help our community appreciate and understand the kind of the value of institutions like ours in their community, and how the kinds of investments that are made on our campus, the benefit radiates out. It's a secondary, tertiary benefit beyond the campus. We always talk about sort of curb in and curb out, and we want to do good in both directions. So when the R1 designation, of course, this is also coupled with our medical education enterprise. We have a $300 million building being constructed on our campus as you and I speak. In addition to that, we're going to add a new $100 million dorm in partnership with Merced College. It'll be only the second of that kind of partnership in the University of California, ourselves and UC Riverside with its local community college. In addition to that, we're going to add another classroom building with labs and classrooms and theater facilities, etc. So all of these things are also hiring people locally, hiring finished workers, buying materials from local vendors, etc., etc. All of this has an economic impact stimulus on the region. We conservatively are a $500 million economic engine. We are the highest ranked university in the Valley. We are the highest ranked U.S. News and World Report. We're in the top 60 public and private schools nationally. We're in the top 30 public universities nationally. This is after only 20 years. And in the state, we're in the top 10 U.S. News and World Report. All of these things bring investment, bring interest. We're going to do some exciting things in I&E work, in intellectual property, looking to bring new investors into the region, venture capitalists working with our faculty on IP and how to commercialize that IP. We've made We received a tremendous support from Sacramento and the governor's office to look at research in the area of climate, water, fire. We've got issues in the valley, as you know, on valley fever, and we've got scientists working on that. All of that, doing good research means good for people, and we're doing a lot of it, a lot of both.
And that research certainly does have impact on public policy making, right? And when
That's right.
UC Merced is being, cited or research that faculty have conducted on those areas you mentioned,
That's
like, climate,
Right.
wildfire, healthcare, and those can impact how legislators are making decisions. It certainly elevates the Valley's influence in Sacramento and even in Washington, D.C. as well.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more.
You mentioned that $500 million economic impact, and I think a hot topic right now that you hear the governor and the legislature talk about is workforce development. How is UC Merced playing a role, that $500 million figure, in workforce development throughout the region?
Right. Well, obviously, we young people come to higher ed, our institution and others, with the hope of acquiring skill, insight, experiences that they can then take into the marketplace. We have a very, very high. So our students are overwhelmingly from California. And our students also come from very modest backgrounds. Modest, financially modest, not modest in their ambition. These are brilliant, fantastic, driven young people from Fresno, from Merced, from Modesto, etc. Okay, so they come with very high ambitions and they graduate at a very high rate.
We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back after this. This is the Maddy Report. We're talking about the importance of UC Merced's R1 research designation for the San Joaquin Valley. Now we're going to talk with Dr. Crystal Kolden, Director of the UC Merced Wildfire Resilience Center, whose research focuses on characterizing and understanding wildfire intersections with the human environment system through geospatial, temporal, and mixed methods approaches. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Kolden. Really appreciate your time on the Maddy Report today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about your research on climate-related wildfire causes. And certainly a timely issue right now in the state of California. Let's start by talking about understanding the climate's role in wildfire. How have climate patterns shifted in recent years to increase wildfire frequency?
Yeah, so climate controls wildfire in a lot of different ways, but the key thing is that, of course, it's making our temperatures warmer. Our summers are very much warmer, and then even our falls, which is another key wildfire season for us, have gotten a lot warmer both during the daytime and overnight. So we don't cool off as much, but that warming alone is really driving a drying pattern. And that drought, both the long-term drought and then just short-term really dry conditions, they dry out all that fuel that is growing, and it allows wildfires to burn much hotter for longer periods of time, and it's much more difficult to suppress the fires. So frequency-wise, we're actually not getting that many more wildfire ignitions these days. What we are getting is many more large and destructive wildfires.
How do public policy decisions affect wildfire resilience in vulnerable communities, especially in rural California?
Yeah, policy decisions drive a lot of different aspects of how wildfires happen, but also what their impacts are. So in California, for a long time, we had a policy of suppressing every single new wildfire. And today, thanks to a lot of ecological research, we understand that in many places, particularly in wilderness and remote areas where it's not going to have negative impacts, that it is often more beneficial to let those fires burn. But in the wildland-urban interface, that area where the wildlands sort of interface with houses, we know that policy matters tremendously because it controls what houses are constructed of, and that area right around homes and communities, often known as defensible space, right? The area right around your home or right around the edges of neighborhoods. And so California has developed what are essentially the most progressive policies in the country about what we should be doing in those spaces to reduce fuels by making our defensible space less flammable, right? But also how we build our homes in these areas. California has the most progressive building codes in the country that require homes in wildland urban interface areas to be built to higher standards that are less flammable. And unfortunately, those policies have only really come into play in the last couple decades. So we have a massive amount of housing stock that is not built to those higher standards and is incredibly flammable. And we see that every time we have a disaster. So those policies, as they continue to evolve, are trying to protect more of our housing and protect the people that live in those rural places, who are often some of the most socially vulnerable populations.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back after this. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back to the Maddy Report. Now we'll sit down with Dr. Joshua Viers, Associate Vice Chancellor of Interdisciplinary Research and Strategic Initiatives. Dr. Viers, thanks for joining us on the Maddy Report today. Really appreciate your time.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to chat with you about some of the work that you're doing at UC Merced. But maybe we can start out, Dr. Viers, as you know, the Central Valley grows much of the nation's food. But water scarcity, climate volatility, outdated infrastructure present major challenges. So maybe could you talk about how is your research addressing some of these issues, and how is UC Merced's Smart Farm initiative changing the game?
At UC Merced, we're trying to really carve a niche in the areas that we focus on, and what you mentioned in and around sustainability, climate resilience, its relationship to food systems in particular. As you well know, the San Joaquin Valley is the powerhouse of the nation in terms of agricultural productivity, but not without some challenges that you mentioned. And so from my role as a professor in environmental engineering and helping direct what we call the Secure Water Future program, we've been trying to address a number of those issues. And so we take a three-pronged approach to that: measurement, management, and markets. And so we feel that with improved measurement, so using some of the latest technology that's available to us, that includes everything from satellite remote sensing to drone-based imaging to what we refer to as the Internet of Things, being able to capture information and transmit it, to leveraging artificial intelligence. Being able to take better measurement on farm allows us to effectively, we think, better manage those resources, both in terms of water resources and the productivity of the farmscape itself. So on the management side of things, we're working not just at UC Merced, but with regional partners to really kind of focus on some things that we think are very innovative. Some of them you've probably heard of: managed aquifer recharge, so being able to do on-farm replenishment of local aquifers and to be able to bank that groundwater for later use. But the way that we're approaching that is with heavy instrumentation to be able to actually characterize the substructure of the aquifer to identify the best places to store that water and how long it may take for that aquifer to recharge. And so we use some fairly sophisticated technology to be able to map that out in three-dimensional detail. And then with the instrumentation, we can actually measure how much of that water is recaptured. And that's important because we think that markets, that third pillar, can be an important means by which we can improve resilience in California agriculture, in so much as if we're able to have some on-farm water savings through those management practices as measured with this new technology, we could actually implement a water market mechanism to allow farmers to trade some of that water, perhaps recapture some revenue, if not bank it for a later date, which becomes incredibly important during drought.
We're talking also about UC Merced's R1 designation. UC Merced is poised to lead in agricultural innovation. How is this research not only serving farmers and communities locally, but reshaping how we think about sustainable farming practices nationwide?
Yeah, that's an absolutely relevant question, in so much as that our elevation to R1, highly productive research status. We joined the ranks of all the prominent universities that most people have heard about across the U.S. Many of these are land-grant universities, and I think what's exceptional for UC Merced, not only being able to achieve this R1 designation within a 20-year time frame, is that it also coincided with us being designated as to what we refer to as an agricultural experiment station. And so back in the late 1800s, in the time of Lincoln, across the U.S., land-grant universities were established. And at that time, the University of California just consisted of UC Berkeley and UCLA, but they had two field stations. One was in Davis and one was in Riverside. And they became field stations in 1905 and 1907 to focus on agricultural research. Later, as we know, in the late 1950s, they became their own campuses. But at that point, nothing really changed. And it's only recently that the University of California extended this designation to UC Merced as well as UC Santa Cruz. And what's different about today is that our focus is really around that ag technology, if you will. And so using some of the new technologies that are being developed in our labs, primarily from the School of Engineering, and being able to bring those out to our experimental smart farm, which is a test bed for all of these new technologies, is that we're showing the evolution of thinking in around this agricultural experiment station and being able to try things that will later be used by farmers, but we can show how they work first, and perhaps if they fail on us rather than on them.
We're talking about all of these different issues that UC Merced is working on with its research. How is what's the nexus between public policy and some of the research that you're involved with at UC Merced?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question too. In my own research, I always want to be able to pursue things that not only add to our knowledge but make a difference, and the way that they make a difference is through public policy itself. We focus, fairly exclusively on that intersection of the food, energy, water side of things. So at times we're looking at some of the energy aspects of it. One example of that is some research that has been ongoing in and around covering aqueducts with solar panels, which is a fairly novel concept. It's not without some challenges in terms of the infrastructure and installation and so forth. But the interesting thing about the outcome of that research was that the energy efficiency of the cooling from the evaporation of the canals onto the solar panels made them much more efficient, and therefore the return on investment was much better. So on the policy side, it's working with local irrigation districts, utility providers, to be able to identify areas where this type of infrastructure may be warranted, in so much as that we're providing renewable energy, as well as some water savings, in so much as we're reducing the evaporative loss on those canals.
To learn more about the Maddy Institute, visit maddyinstitute.com. The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Maddy Institute. If you'd like to share your thoughts about today's episode of the Maddy Report, please visit our website at maddyinstitute.com.